What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be going over all the details of a Naval Special Warfare Development Group mission in which they assault 3 massive compounds full of terrorists. As per usual, I will have some devgru combat footage and photos that kind of lines up with the story going on in the background for you guys to look at. But before we jump into this story, it's important for you guys to have the context of where we are in the war at this point. So a little ways into the war, the tactics that special operations and specifically SEAL teams were using to assault buildings and compounds changed completely. In the beginning of the war, they were assaulting these buildings just hard and fast. They would blow a huge hole in the door or the wall. They'd flip up their nods so they could run faster through the building, and they would just move as quickly as they could, taking out everyone as loud as they could, just super freaking quickly, no stealth involved at all. And then a little ways into the war, they flipped the script completely and decided, hey, why don't we, instead of landing our helicopters right outside the front door, let's land our helicopters like a mile to 2 miles away from the target building and hike our way to the compound super stealthy like, and then we can just creep through doors and windows under nods in complete darkness as quiet as we can and take out everyone inside the compound before they even know we're there. And this specific mission we're looking at today is right when they made that switch. Like, they had just, this specific SEAL team here especially had just started kind of testing out this new tactic of being stealthy in training, and this is like the first mission where they really decided, okay, this is working out well in training, let's give this a shot for real out in the field. It's also important for you guys to know that the details of this mission are coming from the book The Operator, written by Rob O'Neill. I will have the link down in the description where you guys can buy this book. I can't recommend it enough. I say that about every book that I read here on the channel, but Rob O'Neill has some incredible stories to tell. He was a Naval Special Warfare Development Group operator. Specifically, he was in Red Squadron, and basically any super famous Navy SEAL Team 6 mission that you can think of, this dude was there. He was there on the raid to kill bin Laden. He was there on the rescue of Captain Phillips. He was one of the SEALs working to save Marcus Luttrell during Operation Red Wings. He's been there on all the crazy missions, and he just has some incredible stories to tell. And this book just gives you a fantastic look into what it was like being a devgru operator during the global war on terror. With all that out of the way, guys, let's jump into this. Intelligence came up with 3 major compounds filled with terrorists, all in the same area. We decided it was the perfect time to try out our new ideas. It would be a huge joint operation. In the briefing, we said we're going to do an offset. We're going to land 5 clicks away, all of us, and we're going to walk in because that way they won't hear us coming and we can all sneak into the target compounds. Everyone agreed to this plan. So we landed at our remote spot in the pitch dark and began our hike. At first it was just sand and open desert. As we got closer, we could hear dogs barking. We didn't worry about that because dogs bark on every target, and it never gave us away. I'm convinced dogs just don't ever stop barking in the Middle East. As we got closer, the ground grew swampy, and we began to see some trees and even a few small vineyards. At about 500 meters out, we could see the outlines of our compound. This was a set point, our last chance to get ready for the assault. I reached up and blindly changed the batteries in my night vision to be sure they weren't going to quit in the middle of a gunfight. Fresh batteries, check. I was ready to go. Then suddenly choppers zoomed overhead. It was Army Special Forces coming in on little birds. They'd refused to walk in. They wanted to land right on the X. The Brits did the exact same thing, only they came in on a Chinook, which is way worse, louder than anything you could imagine. Our guys were all cursing up a storm. Everybody and their cousin now knew we were there, and we had to hustle. The snipers and ladder carriers sprinted to the nearest roofline to get up high. As soon as they got up there, I heard some shots. Suddenly, everybody was blasting. Each unit had selected their own compound to assault, and we moved in on our objective compound quickly, going in and going dark, using the new tactics. My team got to the main entrance on Building 1-1, our target. Because there was a huge gunfight happening all around us, we decided to put a charge on the primary entrance, the front door. Our breacher made his way up with my team leader holding security. The breacher placed the charge and moved to a safe distance, and then blew the door. We quietly entered and found ourselves in a long hallway. The charge had filled the house with dust, while Andy, Johnny, and 2 other guys and I made our way forward in our usual CQB formation, only moving more methodically because you don't sprint with night vision down. I was the 4th man back. The infrared torches at the ends of our guns lit up the space. A guy with an AK-47 pointed right at us popped out of the doorway, just like in one of those amusement park houses of horror. We were standing there just looking at him, and he was looking right back at us, but he couldn't see us. It was like we were ghosts. Before we could shoot, he disappeared back behind the door. Andy and another guy, a big, tough guy, pushed through the door, and I heard the distinctive brat of the big guy's gun. We were all a little awed by the moment. This big, seriously tough guy had never killed anybody before, and now he just shot this guy in the face. I would learn that in a gunfight, the combination of adrenaline, muscle memory, and superhuman focus leaves no space for fear. I wasn't shutting it out, there was just no room for it. When we would return from a mission and let down a bit, a thought would sweep over me. Wow, I almost died. Then I might feel that chest clutching and stomach churning hand of fear reaching in. But my only emotion in the actual moment was curiosity. We knew Andy had been in more gunfights than Jesse James, so when we came to that body in the room, we said, "Andy, go check that guy." Andy walked over to the crumpled figure and shined a white light on him. The guy's face was split wide like a melon dropped on a cement floor. Okay, so we were officially in combat. We finished clearing the house. Johnny and I heard the snipers going hot outside. The 2 of us left the building and saw a sniper, a guy we called Dirty, up on top of one of the buildings looking down at us. That was good. His job was to cover us as we made our move. Johnny was ahead of me in a little alley between 2 of the buildings. We needed to move around the corner and had to assume there were enemy fighters on the other side. Johnny started moving forward. I knew by the angle he'd taken that I needed to split to the other side of the alley so I could cover in front of him and he could cover in front of me. Our fields of fire crossing at a point ahead of and between us. No words, no hand signals, just years of practice. We'd done it hundreds of times in training, and it had worked with paper targets. We were both moving now. Then 2 bad guys popped up with guns. We both blasted them. It was instantaneous and simultaneous. Both gunmen dropped, lifeless weight. We'd both killed our first guys at the same instant. "Dang, Johnny, I just killed that guy." I pointed my visible floodlight at the body. It wasn't like you see in the movies. Guys don't crash through windows or fly through the air when you shoot them. They just collapse on themselves in awkward positions. My invisible light was showing me this now crumpled terrorist with an AK-47 by his head. I was still looking when Johnny said, "I just killed my first guy too. What do we do now?" "Well, now I guess we do one of those bounding things," he said. Obviously, there were bad guys in the building up ahead, and we needed to move back to get more guys so we could take it down. Bounding meant a staggered retreat. We went back and grabbed some guys and cleared that building. There was one guy inside the house who had a nasty looking leg wound. He'd managed to dispose of his weapon before we got to him, so he was unarmed, but he was obviously a bad guy. We put a tourniquet on him and prepared him to be moved to one of the helicopters and then a hospital. I doubt Al-Qaeda would do the same for us. When we came back out of the building, there was gunfire everywhere. I could hear the bullets cracking above our heads. I was thinking, man, these guys are lousy shots. What I came to understand later was that most of the enemy truly believed that Allah would guide their bullets, so why bother to aim? Their faith is probably a key reason I'm still in one piece today. But even poorly aimed fire was a threat, especially so much of it. Our snipers were all shooting toward a nearby mosque where the terrorists had fled to make a last stand. We didn't know what weapons they had in there, and we didn't want to find out. Instantly, we thought of the Rangers who'd come in with us. Rangers are our big blocking force. Typically, they would defend our perimeter as we went in after high-value targets. When the time for fighting with precision is over and you need to F people up, you turn to the Rangers, who have black belts in effing people up. We had one Ranger who was about 6'6", and he carried the Carl Gustav, a Swedish-made shoulder-fired rocket launcher like a bazooka. Another Ranger who was about 5'5" followed him everywhere. His job was to carry the backpack filled with the 84mm rockets that the Carl Gustav fires. This poor dude, I don't think he even carried a gun. For every step his giant of a partner took, he had to take two, lugging those heavy rockets. Who says the army has no sense of humor? So yeah, the bad guys were in a mosque, but they were shooting at us. This was early in the war, and the rules of engagement were flexible. If you're taking fire, you're taking fire. So permission to engage, engage. The big Ranger loaded the Gustav up and launched one right into the mosque. We told him to hit it again. He reloaded and fired, another rocket slamming into the mosque. The mosque was dead silent at this point, a black cloud drifting from the door. We were about to go clear it when the little short Ranger said, "Can we fire one more? One less rocket to carry." Sure, why not? So we launched one more. When we looked in there, it looked like Jason from Friday the 13th had beaten us to it. Bodies were flung everywhere, sliced and diced. It was pretty bad. But the thing that haunted me a little wasn't so much the gruesome sight. Rather, it was the sound. A sound like water pouring out of a spigot, only it wasn't water. When we got back to the base, we did a debrief. I told the story of me and Johnny doing the crossfire in the alley, and the sniper Dirty related how he'd engaged those guys from the rooftop. Then the bosses said, "Okay, what happened in the mosque?" I said, "Well, we cleared it with the Rangers. I'm going to let the Ranger debrief it this time." Most of the Rangers were young kids, and they never said anything in these briefings. Now I was putting this kid on the spot. He stood up and kept standing up until he reached his towering 6'6". "Well," he said, "we made entry. The number one man was Carl Gustav." That was my first real gunfight, and we all learned a lot. Walk in, don't fly in, because that's what stirs up the hornet's nest. Stay blacked out as you go in, don't shine your white light, it could get you shot up. Maybe the most surprising thing I learned was it's exciting. I'd been training for so long to get into fights, and now we were in it, and it wasn't as bad as I'd feared. I was able to keep my crap together and make decisions that improved my position. My buddies and I were almost overqualified to fight these a-holes. We were good at it. And I had my first kill. I don't want to compare it to my first buck, and yet there was some similarity. I'd envied the guys who'd already killed an enemy fighter and bragged about it. Now I was part of the club. I felt no remorse. Zero. These guys would have sooner slit my throat than look at me. They lived a life dedicated to destroying Western culture and everything it stood for. They were part of a network whose biggest celebrations came when they managed to bring down a tourist hotel and kill men, women, and children who were doing nothing more threatening than trying to decide between the hot or cold buffet. They'd created a cult of death. Enjoy paradise, gentlemen. And with that, guys, that's going to be the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for checking it out. Make sure you hit that like button if you did enjoy it. It helps support the channel more than you could imagine. And like I said earlier, all the details of this mission are coming from the book The Operator, written by Rob O'Neill, and I will have a link in the description where you guys can go check out that book, and I highly recommend that you do. And I want to quickly address, I didn't want to do this, but literally every time I make a video that talks about Rob O'Neill, I get comments from people saying don't support him, don't share his stories, he's a liar, he says he's the one that killed bin Laden, but he isn't. And I just want to say, guys, at the end of the day, none of us were there on that operation. None of us know who actually fired the shot that killed bin Laden. And I don't freaking care. At the end of the day, it was a team effort. Not one guy would have made it into that room and fired the shot to kill bin Laden without the dude to his left and to the right. It was a complete team effort. And every single dude on that operation, the pilots, the analysts that found bin Laden, all of them killed bin Laden on that day. And they're all American heroes who deserve to have their stories told. But at the end of the day, he has served our country at the absolute highest level and dedicated his life to serving our country at the highest level. And for that, he has my utmost, absolute, greatest gratitude and respect. And it's an honor to share his stories and his book here on this channel. But anyway, that's my little rant for the day. I didn't really want to get into all that, but I just need to get off my chest at the end of the video because I just always get these comments. Like every time I do a story that's highlighting this incredible thing that this guy did when he was serving in the military, I get these comments that are like bashing the dude for what he did when he got out of the military. Or like, oh, but he said this in this interview, how could you support him? Or he wrote this book where he did this, how could you support him? And it's like, I don't freaking care what Rob O'Neill does on a daily basis now that he's out of the military, aside from the fact that I hope that he's living a great life and is as happy as can be and enjoying his retirement from the military. I don't care what he's doing. I'm not talking about what he's doing now. I'm covering what he did, his sacrifice for our country when he served in the military. That's what I'm talking about. I don't care what he's doing now. Anyway, enough of that. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll talk to you guys later.